Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artists, makers, and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. You can connect with me over on my website, which is mikebrennan.me, and also on Instagram, I'm Mike Bone. I would love for you to go check out some resources I have, dailycreativehabit.com. I've created resources just with you in mind as a creative person, someone who may be struggling with consistency, struggling with some inspiration, struggling with community, anything that you may be encountering on your creative journey, someone else has. Matter of fact, I've probably experienced those same things, and I create resources to help you because I believe that when you create, we all win. That's not just a bumper sticker phrase. It's not just a platitude, but it's something I truly believe, because when you engage with your creativity, you're the best version of yourself. And other people win because they also are the recipients of the things that you create and how you see the world and how you show up. And when you're the best version of yourself, other people also get inspired and they want to show up as the best versions of themselves as well. So this is what's on the line with creativity, and you choosing to paint, to draw, to write, to perform, to bake, whatever your creativity looks like, organize, decorate your home, create a welcoming environment, problem solve. All that stuff is creativity. And I want to encourage you to do it often, do it with intention and purpose, and help it be something that's a gift for you as well as others. You can check out my Daily Creative Habit 90-Day Self-Guided Journal, which we actually talk about on the episode today with the interview with my guest, which I'll get to in a moment. But you can go to dailycreativehabit.com or amazon.com and get the Daily Creative Habit Journal. It is a 90-day experience that is self-guided, where you set intention of what it is that you want to create. And then at the end of the day, you loop back and say, did I do what I said I was going to do? If so, what did that look like? If not, what were my blocks? What happened there? It's a way for you to get things out of your head onto a page, set intention, take action, and then see progress, because you're tracking and measuring what's happening. It's not simply like, I know I showed up today and did something, but I'm not really sure what happened to that. This is a way for you to know specifically and exactly what happened. And so you can be encouraged by your progress. You can challenge yourself and know that this is a way to help keep you accountable to show up again and again for your creativity and for yourself. So if that's something you'd like, again, head to dailycreativehabit.com, or you can find it on Amazon as well. Now, today, man, I have a conversation that is so much with a kindred spirit, and it is with my guest, Lindsey Ellyn. And she is so many things, but we talk a lot about her being an author of The Shame Game, which is a book she wrote, as well as a journal. And we talk about the importance of journaling. And if you're someone who is resistant to journaling, you're thinking, I don't know, journaling has never really worked for me, I want you to pay close attention, because she talks about things that may help reframe this, and not simply just pouring out some struggles and some pain, but really as a place to process and as a way to practice self-awareness, which then can actually help you have a springboard for some other things that maybe you do creatively or in your business or just in your life. I love the warmth that Lindsey has and the insights that she has, so much wisdom in what she says and in the experiences she has had and how she talks about them, her vulnerability. And so there's intentionality, there's purpose in what she does and how she shows up. And certainly there's overlap in the things that we do, how we do them. And so I think you'll really resonate with a lot of the things that she has to share today on this episode. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of the way. Here is my creative chat with Lindsey Ellyn. Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast, Lindsey.
I'm so excited to be here today, Mike.
Yes, I'm excited too. For the listeners' sake, we met at an art crawl that I was set up at, and you came in with your mom, and you were looking over some of the books I had and some of the stuff I had on my table, and we got into conversation. And I love when that happens, just kind of this very organic type of thing. And fun fact that you even just mentioned before we got rolling, your mom bought my Daily Creative Habit journal. and has been using it and gave a glowing testimonial.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, my mom, it was so cool to meet you that night. There are so many reasons why I felt like our paths connected, but definitely for, yeah, my mom's another kind of creative, has always loved writing and stuff, and she is currently using it, and it's really transformed how quickly she's even being able to create. And so it's so cool as a daughter of, a fellow writer mother who's like continuing to get her stuff out, like being able to see like a blockade kind of be removed because of the journal that you created. And as creatives, we always need different means, and sometimes we get blocked and we need something new to switch it up. And I think that your journal has been such a blessing to her in her creative process. So for many reasons, it's been such a joy to meet you, but particularly especially because it's freed my mom from some of her kind of creative ruts and got her to be more bold with her creativity, and just start posting more fearlessly. So very cool.
I absolutely love that, and it's a complete honor. I'd love to hear those stories and that feedback. So thank you, and thank her for me, of course. But today we're talking about you. We're talking about the things that you do creatively in your journey, in your process. And I'm excited because you're also someone who, you have your hand in a bunch of things creatively, right? And I'm sure there are, depending upon where conversations go and what seasons there are, you may have some things come to the foreground, other things go to the background. But primarily right now, right, we're talking about you in terms of being an author, a writer, right? So we're talking, but besides that, besides being a writer and author, is there anything else that you want to kind of fill in and say, like, here's some other things that I do, here's some other interests I have, just to kind of give a balanced picture of kind of who Lindsey is, so to speak?
Yeah, totally. No, I've always kind of been a creative, and it's just kind of morphed through the time. I never imagined being a writer, never imagined publishing my own book and stuff, but I have been a creative since I was little. I come from a very creative family. I was in fine arts in high school. I went for a major in visual communication designs, which is like kind of graphic design, UI, UX. Had my hand in then product design as well. Went into concept designing and trend direction and stuff. I currently still do a lot of trend forecasting and predicting and making compelling presentations in order to show and share stories. But yeah, all during that time, even I had creativity that went in the food realm, and kind of bringing creativity and how I entertained. And more recently, it's been this iteration of bringing out a creative part of my past, which when I was little, I used to even write songs and use journaling as a way to process emotions. And after needing to process some emotions that happened over the last few years around my mental health and relational health and stuff like that, I just ended up using another part of my creative brain, which was really kind of getting pen to paper and then words printed on a page around some of my stories. So there's been a lot of different facets of creativity. I once heard someone say that they're a slash, and I feel like that's kind of my style. Creativity kind of runs through my veins and part of my family DNA, even within both my parents and grandparents. So it's just kind of part of who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to put creativity in a box so many times where we just identify it as one modality or expression can really feel limiting, first off, for somebody who's more than that. But I think it's also limiting for creativity because then we have a tendency to only think about it in those terms and through those lenses. And that's when I get into conversations with people where they're like, well, I'm not creative because, what they're really saying is I'm not artistic.
Right.
And I'm like, no, there's a big difference between that. Being creative doesn't always mean that you're artistic. You can be creative in a multitude of ways. And even in the way that you approach life, the way that you problem solve. I mean, it's so much bigger than we often give it credit for. And so I love talking about all the different ways that it can show up. And when someone is, as you put it, the slash creative, I like that because now I have like Guns N' Roses in my head. And
I wish I was at a creative conference, and I wish I could remember the artist name that said that. So it's definitely not an original thing, but it's to your point. There is many facets of creativity, and it's not just artistic. There's so many different ways.
I've often said that in terms of the slash. I said I had a slash job. Actually, I was in full-time ministry for a period of my life. And the first job that I had there, I called it the slash job because it was like, basically, here's all these unrelated things that nobody else wants to do. And now that's your job description. So
yeah, dynamic too.
yes. I guess that's a nicer way to say it. Goodness. So one of the things you mentioned, which is really interesting to me, and I feel like this could be a whole other conversation, but just maybe briefly, When you talk about trend setting and forecasting, how does one actually go about doing that? Like what is the how do you know what's going to be the next thing or something that might catch on culturally or in a certain industry?
Yeah. Yeah, it really comes attuned to just being really aware of all of my surroundings all the time and picking up. Really think it's, to be honest, a gift from God that He's kind of given me this brain of just always being super attuned to what's going on around me. And even like writing the book, I actually think is a little bit of that kind of trend forecasting. I was noticing even this trend in what was happening in my life within like the dating world and being single and the dating app world. Like the dating app world is a trend, right? The dating app world is a trend because technology came in and it has influenced the way that people are relating and trying to find relationships, and sometimes maybe not trying to find relationships and trying to find other things. And so I think it's more just like being super open and saying like it's kind of like a almost like a experiment with your brain where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna go and observe everything that's happening. And then my brain starts to like pull common stories together. And I wish I could always explain how it happens, but if you start to become attuned to any industry, you can start to be like, okay, what am I noticing? What are the common conversations happening? If I think about in the singles world or whatever, like what am I always talking to my single friends about? Or when I'm, or when married people are relating to singles, like what are their assumptions? What are their patterns? What are the things that aren't like, how are they connecting? And so no matter what industry you're talking about, I think it's more just, I've always had a very curious mindset. I ask a lot of questions. I'm also a storyteller, and like I want to know more. I want to like get to the root of what we're talking about. And I think that with that you have to be able to kind of into kind of the statement around it's kind of a gift is like I feel like I'm a visionary person, and so I don't always get stuck. While I used to be a perfectionist in the details, I'm still a very detail oriented person. I also have this ability to kind of see this 10,000-foot view, 10-year out view of like this is what everybody's saying or doing or thinking or what they're enjoying. And like if I start to then put together all these other different, social, environmental, political, whatever it is, cultural context, like starting to feel the undercurrent of then, okay, what's gonna pop next? And so it's a little bit of art and science, right? Like there is art and science, and I think there's intuition, and I think like anything you can train your brain to do it. And so yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of both. I did data diving, but then also just a lot of observing. I'm super curious about people in general, but then also super curious about like what does research say? What is how are we even researching things, and what's being researched right now? Even that's its own trend of what it rises to prominence. So yeah, it's just like it's almost like that whole example when people say like don't think of a blue elephant and you start thinking of a blue elephant, right? Like once
Right.
you start to become aware to any part of or aspect, whether that's a creative art, a product, social construction, social ideas, right? You can start being okay. I'm gonna like start to observe whenever I see that blue elephant, whenever I see those things, and then start to piece things together, and then test it out by having conversations about people with people about like what are they liking, what's what are they doing, all that kind of stuff, to then start to piece together a possible hypothesis of what could come.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you kind of brought it down to almost like these basic things that are not so mystical and that I think are open to everyone if they're pursuing that or being intentional, which is curiosity, intuition, and openness, those kind of things that really help you notice, help you be in the moment, I'm sure. And then make those connections on patterns.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating to me, just to think like, yeah, all that is very intentional. All that is very dialed in to being able to use those things to get that information. And then I think you said it really well. So I'll leave it at that. But,
Yeah, yeah.
I do find it a really interesting topic for sure.
Yeah. Well, and there is just so many too, like everything that exists now, or every thought that's been said has been spoken before. Like nothing really is truly new under the sun, right? And I love your use of the word patterns. Like that is exactly like observing and noticing patterns, whether that's outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves, right? Like there is a trend, there's
Yeah.
a trend curve of myself of what's incoming into my life, and new things I'm thinking about, new ways I'm interacting, new ways I'm observing myself in the world and how I want to change. And there's things like, pre-peak and post-peak, right? Like things that I have integrated, things that I'm ready to get rid of, things that I'm no longer talking about, right? So like there's, even as we're talking, I'm even just thinking like we even have these kind of internal trend curves that we have throughout our lifetime, even about our personality and the person that we're wanting to be, whether it's a creative person or just observing ourselves as a human as a whole, right?
Yeah.
That's impacted by the social, the environmental, the seasons that we're in, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of self-awareness in that. Sitting with yourself. I like that, thinking about it in terms of the external and the internal patterns that happen, and taking notice and seeing what is it telling me about the situation, about myself, the story that's happening, right?
Yeah.
That's a great way to look at that. And I'm sure that that's probably tied into your journaling practice, correct?
Yes, for sure. Journaling has been such a huge breakthrough because it's the only way I can observe and create understand my patterns, right? Like there is there's so many times I have conversations with people that maybe are finding themselves in the same anxiety, or even when I do, and I'm like, have you written it down? Even to myself, have I written it down yet? Have I tried to develop the language? Have I tried to get it out? Because until something's written out, even though we think we can talk about it or have it in our mind, there's really something about using the pen and the paper and sitting there. And I think, to be honest, it's because in that observation, in that journaling, what it is, it's a meditation. Journaling is meditative because you can't be anywhere but the page, like where you are on the page with the pen. Like you can't be writing something and thinking something else. It's the moment where my body, my mind, and my everything comes into alignment. I'm like truly present because I can't be writing one thing and like really diving into anything else too deep. So it's a very meditative practice. And then yeah, I'm able to, whether it's through reading through my journals or even just reading through what I wrote yesterday, I'm like, oh, that was a limiting belief, or I wasn't really curious about myself or the other person, or that's the seventh time I wrote about that. Like, is there another way I should be articulating this or journaling this or expressing this that would help to get me out of something that's clearly I want to change or needs to change, but like writing it hasn't happened? Do I need to start drawing it out? Do I need to start, and so it helps you, like there's an art of play in journaling and release and yeah, self-identification of around our patterns and even the patterns of the world around us and the people we interact with and stuff that I think is really transformational, which is, I'm sure I'd be so curious, even like your perspective on that, doing your journal that you sell and stuff, kind of, yeah, how you view that process too.
Yeah, I think you said it well in terms of it's a process of sitting with yourself and downloading some things that maybe are often ethereal and slippery,
Mm.
right? Thoughts that we have or intentions we have. And it's a tool to be able to make it a little bit more concrete and give it something that you can look at in the moment, but also come back to it when you're outside the moment. So it kind of sets an anchor, I think, a little bit, and gives you information, right? In terms of the journal that I created, I mean, it's really two things of identifying what it is that you want to do creatively and setting that intention, and then actually giving you a place where you can show up and say, am I doing what I said I was going to do? And if
Mm.
so, what did that look like? And if not, how come? And it's not for anybody else but yourself, just to give yourself a place to track and measure and make sure that you're actually making progress. Because I think so often in creativity, progress is something that we don't really see unless like we're painting something or writing something. Like we see a word count, we see marks or strokes on a canvas or paper, and we know when something's completed. But beyond that, there is so much in creativity that maybe isn't packaged up neatly like that and is still an important part of the process. And we can lose that or not identify that as something that's important if we're not paying attention to it. And so I love that it kind of comes back around to what you were saying earlier, as far as noticing, as far as being curious and really just paying attention to what's happening in yourself, in the moment, in your process, so that you can celebrate and then also improve it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like your celebrate part too. Like journaling too doesn't have to be, only in pain. Like I love journaling in my happiness of like, wow, God, that was
Yeah.
awesome. I can't believe that happened. That like, or even predictively, there's been some where even like I've just really had this feeling by this time next year, I'm going to be doing this. And like then turning to that page and realizing that's exactly what happened. And that opportunity wasn't even I didn't even have that opportunity didn't even exist. But then like I put it down on paper and now suddenly I'm living it on that like almost exact month, I think it was. We're just like, whoa, like there's power in our words and also power in celebration and not just like when the going gets tough, right? But in just like every part of our experience of human emotions and relational things and stuff like that, or career things or creative things, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah. And often that's where we're capturing seeds of things that become something else. I'm sure that, now we'll talk about your book, The Shame Game. I'm sure that there were many moments where you started to journal things, started to get ideas out and work things out in that format of journaling before it was even a thought of like, this is going to become a book, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit through the process of that and like why the book? Give us some background.
yeah. Yeah, it was one of those so I started writing this book out of like necessity, but yeah, I was going through I went through this diagnosis that kind of just like sunk me into one of the deepest depressions I had. And and ultimately thought of ending my life. And I it was the journaling that got me out of my head and out of my grief, and being able to like start to really like talk to myself in a healthier way, while at the same time getting out all the unhealthy talk in my head. And I would say that the journaling was I used the journaling in the end to help inform parts of my book, especially when I was like would take a chapter and wrote about an experience I had. Like so I was going back to that day I wrote it and trying to bring the readers through to that memory based on how my journal was. I didn't have that for every experience. When you write a book, you don't have everything documented. I mean, even the moment something happens is the moment that our brain starts to even, bring things into it that aren't as true as the moment it happened, right? Because we're all going off of our experiences. But the art of journaling allowed me to start to form what my perspective, what my opinion, what the things that weren't adding up were. So then when I got to share more pointedly with my reader, like I had integrated what I actually believe based on like multiple pages of journaling where I got to then in my book. And some of, when you writing a book is also like journaling in a way too. And so it's hard to sometimes compare the two, but I had to wrestle out some of those internal demons in my journal. The things that, stayed on the cutting room floor, so to say, or that I didn't feel like I wanted to type out and have forever in the digital landscape. But I needed to get out in order for me to actually bypass what I thought maybe was the pain and actually focus it on the root of that, right? Like sometimes we can so focus on a past experience that we actually it's usually not tied to that one thing, but it gives us a bigger storyline of this is something in my life that I struggle with. This is something, in the case of my book, The Shame Game, like it was through journaling out all these lies and disappointments and things that happened to me that then I was able to say, like, whoa, I'm sitting in piles of shame from my past and that were created because of even probably things that I didn't journal when I was younger that happened to me that I wish I would have had the creative expression to journal, so that then as they happened I actually processed them and I didn't store them up in my body, right? And so it was kind of like the journal acted as a testing ground, refining ground, visionary ground too, so that then when I wrote my book, I had all these ideas articulated in a messy way that then I could put more in a concise way, or like in a way that I truly believed in because I'd integrated it from many days of journaling, or from like
Yeah.
wrestling with myself a bit. And when you write a book, like you have to, at the end of the day, obviously, like my book is a nonfiction and creative memoir, as they might say, and And so there is a lot of personal stories, but I also want it to relate to the reader. I want
Right.
it, I want to pull the through line out of like, this is the main point that I've learned, as like, this is the humanity point of it that bridges all of everything I've experienced that I want to try to change and encourage a shift in. So it was definitely a part of the finding freedom in journaling allowed me to find freedom in my external voice, because I journaled enough to, build up the confidence to be like, okay, I trust myself enough now to use my voice. And I trust it so much that I'm actually willing to say it out loud to people and say, while this book, even like reading it now, there's parts where I've even transformed from it, but new readers will see that maybe as me right now. That like whenever you publish something, you instantly are continue to be created new, right? And you keep evolving. And so yeah, it's a point in time, but like I needed journaling in order to execute some of the, or like go through and think through some of the ideas, like what's actually that humanity piece around it that everyone can relate to.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of things you said in there that I just want to highlight. For one, I totally relate to the thought of, and I love how you said it, because it's this, the time you spent journaling helped you hone this voice and this confidence so that when it became something public rather than private, it's like you were ready to cross into that. And I never really thought about it in those terms, but that's actually what happened to me as well.
Mm.
Because I never thought, like, I'm not a writer, I'm an artist, I'm a creative person, I'm a designer, I'm all these other titles and things. But I never really thought of myself as a writer and an author. And then it was, oh, I feel like there's this message that needs to get out there, and this is the format at which it needs to. So I guess I am a writer. I don't, right? Like, kind of backing into it. But then realizing, like, the things I want to say, how I want to say them, that's all been working in the background through journaling, through private. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it was ready to come out to public, that voice, like you said, was kind of honed already. The thoughts were ready to be extracted and shared in a way, which leads me to my second point I wanted to highlight, was when you talked about finding things that are kind of that thread that are universal, that someone can see this and hear this and go, oh, my situation may be different, but what you just said there, I need that for my journey right now. I need that to help make meaning, or to help me process something, or just even give me hope, or let me know I'm not alone, help me feel seen and heard, right? Those things. And that's exactly why I do this podcast. That's why I have these conversations, because I'm always looking for, what are those threads? Because I forget who said this, but there's that quote that says, in the particular lies the universal.
Mm.
And it's true, because we share our particular stories and journeys and experiences. But as we're doing that, we allow other people to look and to listen, and then to identify, that's me too. And then it gives a sense of community and, again, sometimes hope around those things. So thank you for that. Thank you for being brave to write, to not just stay in your private journal, but also to come into public with the things that you have experienced and learned and processed and continue to, because that's a gift not only to yourself, but to everyone else. So thank you for that. Has there been something that's been surprising about this process or journey of writing this book?
As you were, one, thank you for that compliment. One of the things that was on my mind as you were saying that is I also wanted to just like say bravo to anyone that's ever written out their story, whether it's private right now and maybe one day will become public, or it stays private. Like, the act of writing something down is courage in of itself, right? Like, from the way that we see how our handwriting is to the level of education, quote unquote, that we received and how our grammar is, it is a very vulnerable thing. And I think there's so many reasons why people have been too scared to journal, have been too scared to do that, even though that's actually the thing that could create huge breakthrough, because they finally get it out. And I think one of the things that I've noticed along this journey, and I have a heart for doing now, which is why I'm trying to do more and more kind of ways of teaching people how to journal, or I'm always so excited when I meet someone that like has a book on their mind or whatever, is that there are so many stories out there, Mike, and I don't know if you experience this as a published author, like there's so many people that are dying to write their story. They know they need a journal, or they know they need to get something out, and they're so stuck in this freeze zone, in this fear zone. And I'm just so passionate to be like, let's get these stories out, whether or not they ever go public or just stay private. Like the amount of people that are aching to write, but are so stuck in their head because of, how their writing was perceived by a first grade teacher, by how they compared their, go back to elementary school, right? Like immediately everyone is like, who has the best handwriting? Who can, stand up when they're doing the popcorn reading? Who can read the easiest, right? Like all those things have stopped reading, have stopped writing because it like created this. I have to, in order to do it, I have to be the best, or I have to be good, or I have to be flawless in my execution. And you can't get good at anything if you never start it or keep doing it consistently. And so I think I noticed on this journey is that just a rising energy in me to just like keep empowering people and saying, go them. Like you're so courageous when you decide that despite all those fears, despite how fearful it can be to write even hard stories or happy stories, whatever it is, that like go you for doing that and like keep doing that. You can leave a legacy behind with even just the generational, as I call it generational, like wealth is mental health, is journaling. Like there is, people don't see that as monetary, but it's, I think, the most wealthiest thing that we can leave behind is like articulating some of those things. And so I think it's just seeing all the people that have this fire and have this like, I've been given the seed of what I want to write about, what I want to share, but I'm so scared to do it. Or I think I have to go through this traditional mode that is and feels and is impossible at times.
Yes.
And we're just like, just create. Like you can be a published, like you can be a writer, you can write a book. If that just means your book got printed on your cheap printer at home, you're an author. If you just wrote a book and you just print, or even if it didn't get print, like you're an author. Like I don't care what people say or what society says, like welcome to authorship, So I think sometimes we put these titles and things that just restrict people from creating. And as a Christian, I believe that as someone who believes that I have a creator and I've been created very particularly, I, as a Christian, believe in any Christ followers, like we should be the best creators out there, and we should be constantly creating to then mirror the God that we believe in and the story that we believe in and stuff. So yeah, I get really fired up about empowering other people because I just realized how many disempowered, fearful, potential future writers, authors, public speakers there are out there that have brilliant stories that could really help change so many lives, including their own once they get it written out and articulated.
Yeah. And I think that is a very powerful thing when you realize I've experienced something and this has changed my life. I want to help other people experience this too, because I've seen the power firsthand and I know what can happen. And it's this generosity of spirit that rises up along with the passion and excitement that says, I want this for you too. Like,
right.
This is amazing. Of course, the person has to want it and they have to have a vision for something. But when they have those things and yet, like you said, they feel stuck, to be able to offer some aid or some insights can make all the difference in the world. I mean, nobody does anything in a vacuum. We've both had experiences where there have been conversations, people have gone before us, things that we've encountered, all that kind of weaves into us being able to show up and to do what we do because of all those experiences, all those people, and we build on their shoulders,
Yeah. Well, and I think even going back to our initial conversation about like my mom really being encouraged by your work and by your journaling, it's like you just never know who God has around you that he's actually trying to use your story to inspire them to go. And like that night, Mike, like that was a very random run-in, like, but it was just like, if you wouldn't have committed to showing up, if you wouldn't have written all the things and published all the things you did, and then decided I'm going to go and do this art walk and be one of the featured artists, which was amazing. Like if you didn't show up, like, I don't know when my mom would have had that breakthrough. Right. And probably would have happened another way, but there was an expediting that happened. And that is, like I read to you her text. But like, that's so beautiful. And we're meant to be the kind of like, it's kind of like this visual of like we each have this flashlight that we can be like, hey, over here, like keep going, right? Like you got this. And even when like, even going back to some of the journaling conversation, the other visual I had was what journaling does. If I'm not a fashion designer by any means, but like in the fashion world, right, we create these, what they create is kind of like a what they call it. It's like kind of like a stencil thing, or they kind of, they'll block out how the fabrics are going to lay on the body. And so that's what journaling is. And then like the act of publishing it or writing a book or whatnot is then like the actual fabric that then fits based on that silhouette that was designed, right? And so, but then what's so cool about it is then once you've gone from journaling, which maybe let's say that's the silhouette of that kind of piece together, how those fabrics will be sewed together, and then created it and decided to wear it, aka the outfit that then gets, and you get to pick out what fabric, what color, how it, like, your fit, form, whatever it is. But then you wear it out, then someone says, I want that thing. Well, great. What you've done is you showed them the setup of how to do a similar thing, but do it different for their body type. So they can be like, hey, I'm a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, need to make some adjustments. But like, whoa, you already have an outline. But now let me go and make that. And maybe I actually want to tweak it a bit, or there's part of my story, or part of my fit, or what style that I need to show. And then they then become like that fashion designer sort of thing. And so there's so much of like, even the act of you showing up at that art walk night, like there's a verse in the Bible that's like, once you kind of have the light, like you put the lamp on the lampstand in order for it to light up more of the room. And that's what we do when we decide to step in, despite the fear, despite whether or not people are going to show up to things or not, or we're just going to just be standing there solo and talk to one person versus 100, right? But like, that is doing it anyways.
Yeah.
And then seeing like, oh, you just impacted, I'm sure you had many of those conversations that night that we met, but like, you just the one, like, that's why I wrote my book. Like, if I can change one person's life by being bold and courageous, then perfect. It's worth every single thing I've invested into it, every single hard night. Like, it's worth it, and it's beyond us, which is the best part about it. Like, it just keeps flowing over. So
yeah. And there's so much about the process that, like, once you've created something and you release it, like, there's a life of its own that it takes on, and you can't possibly know who is going to encounter what you create, the circumstances around it. I mean, sure, there are marketing plans and things of that nature, and I think those are important parts of trying to maximize the work that you've already done. But there's a sense of like, you kind of just let go and go, that's not mine to own. I can't convince people. I can't force people. I can't make things happen to a certain degree. It's just this openness that goes, I'm releasing it, and it's going to find its way to the people who need it in the time at which they need it. And to be grateful to be able to be a part of that in the creation process. And then even afterwards, where it makes a connection for someone, or it becomes a helpful tool for somebody, or, an encouragement. I think those are powerful things. And when we are open enough and don't try to micromanage and control things so much, there can be a freedom for us that would otherwise be frustration, perhaps, or a sense of just clenched fist, kind of close-handed. It needs to look like this. It needs to happen in this time. It needs to happen in this way. Like all the things that we so often get so bound up in. It's just a good reminder to be open-handed, and do the things that are yours to do, own the things that are yours to own. But then after that, make room, make space, and let it go.
That's so beautifully said. I love that so much. And two, like, I'll do an and to that. And imagine everything you just said, applying it to our own sense of creativity, to be like, what if we just just went, whew, like open hand, be like, take away all those blockades, take away all those things. I don't know what it felt for you, but after I, published a book, it got a little easier. Then I was like, okay, I can also do a journal that goes along with this. Like, you start stepping courageously and despite the fear into one thing, and then your eyes like, wait, if I did that, you just start to catch other things. And in the art of creating catches you into these different avenues that if you didn't start somewhere, you would have never ended where, like, we don't know, Mike, I don't know, like, you now doing this podcast, like, I don't know what's next for you, right? Like, but you keep proving to yourself that there's so many creative facets, so many different people that have these needs. And so I imagine that's going to keep iterating throughout your entire life, throughout our entire lives, because of the decision to be like, I'm going to step into that, even though I've never created a podcast, even though I've never authored a book, like, even though I've never done that thing, even though I never hosted an event, even though I've never done an art crawl.
Right.
And then suddenly you're like, wait, I've done an art crawl, I've done a podcast, I've done a book, I've done a journal, right? And then you're like,
Yeah.
whoa. So now should I do a movie? Now should I do an experience?
Yeah.
Now should like should I write an album now? Like I moved to Nashville at the end of October, and I knew one of the reasons God was leading me down here was to bring back this like innate songwriting and singing I had as a child. And why I'm not here for a Nashville career, even though my sparkles may sometimes make me seem like I'm a wannabe singer. I have no interest in doing that. But what I want to get back to is like God had like put that innate creativity of like wanting to hum a tune in order to do something. And now I'm taking voice lessons just for the heck of it. No one will probably ever hear my voice outside that room, maybe, but like just because I'm like, okay, what's all the things in the childhood that either because of resources, because of circumstances, because of environment, it was stopped, and like what do I need to bring back from childhood? And so that's like the being childlike even with our creativity, and being like put all those adult notions aside of doing it perfect and just like do it and then see what it spins off into, how
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Yes, yes. And everything builds on each other, like you said. And I think partially it can be one form inspires and informs another, but then also, like you said, building confidence. You show up and you do something and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be," or this really awakened something in me or taught me something that now is going to be a part of the process that I approach in everything that I do. Or, I mean, there's so many things that once we stop blocking ourselves, once we stop listening to fear and we get out of our own way, that we can step into. And the thing I love about creativity is that creativity is possibility, and possibility is endless. There's always something new. There's always something more. And that's exciting. You'll never run out of creativity.
Let's go. This is so good. I feel like at some point, I'm just going to put this out there, but I could see you hosting like some sort of creative conference where it's like, I don't know, there's some out there obviously now, but there is just something about like, yeah, pulling together all these people that never expected to be in a certain way or do a certain thing, and just like, get everybody that's just like, let's be explorers together and like, let's be messy together. No, so I love what you're saying. There's
Creative underdogs.
Hey, that's so good. Literally, I always say that I've in every single part of my career or life, like I've literally always been an underdog. Like when I was in swimming growing up, I was always in the slowest lane, sometimes with people like years younger than me, always last. But then like I was the swim team captain, right? Because there's a different aspect of that swimming world that I was good at, which was relational stuff. And like even in my career, like there was so many people that went to these beautiful schools and are beautiful artists, but like I went to a state school and like, luckily didn't have all these student loans and stuff, but also then came into my career so insecure because I didn't have that, and like still at the same place. And then like and I'm an author, but like I didn't go to school for writing. And I just think that sometimes I've gotten really good at being an underdog and realizing that like you can underdog it to a lot of places.
Yes.
Like you actually, and that's an encouragement too, is I think one of the aspects as I'm thinking about how to continue to get some of this message about journaling is how do I make it accessible? How do I make it so that people don't have to feel like they, say in the student loan relationship sort of world, that you don't have to go and spend crazy money to just like go and do something that like is so at your fingertips already, like getting a piece of paper and writing, right? Like there's so many things where I think we've made it so we've almost in the art of making something beautiful, we can also make it inaccessible. And I think like my goal for my life is always to find out like how can I get beauty but then also have it be accessible? How can the two coexist in order to make sure that no matter your socioeconomic status, how you grew up, the environment you're in, that there is an outlet that you can touch and be a resource and be a way to express yourself. And yeah, like more of that, and more underdogs. More underdogs need to come out barking, and I just think that they would really change the world.
Love that. Love that. Oh, so good. Unbelievably, we're already at the top of our time. I feel like we could
Wild.
talk for days here. We didn't even get into some of the other stuff I want to, so maybe I have to have it back sometime. But
Would love to.
as we're kind of wrapping things up here, for anyone local, you have a workshop, a journaling workshop that you're going to be hosting. So tell us a little bit about that. And then also tell us, where can people find your book, The Shame Game, and the journal, and where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm not on any social media. I just have my website. That was very intentional as I was building my business. I'm sure maybe we can include a link in the description, but Lindsey Ellyn, LindseyEllyn.com is where you'll get all of the info. You can get, my book is available on Amazon. The Shame Game. Let's see, I have a copy here.
Yeah, I have my copy here too.
Hey, there you go. It looks like a little, playing card. And I'm not selling my journal online, but as you said, if you're in the Franklin area, Saturday, May 31st at Onyx and Alabaster, you have to go online onto my website to get tickets, but $25 gets you a ticket into the event. It's from 10 to 11 a.m. And basically it's a journaling seminar and author event. I'm going through what I'm calling shape, sharpen, and share, or not. But shape, sharpen, share. And what it's doing is really kind of helping to empower people around the power of journaling, whether it's for business reasons, for personal reasons, or for creative endeavors. And what's really cool is part of the way that I've constructed it, and what I felt like I was download the other night, is I'm actually going to be sharing how I journaled to get the journaling event to be like what people will experience who attend. And so it's actually, I'm going to be vulnerably sharing up and showing the pages of my journal about my thought process of how to do this and like what my first event is going to look like. And so, yeah, if you're in the Franklin, Tennessee area and want to grab a ticket, you can get those on my website. And yeah, I'm very much a 3 miles per hour sort of walk in this. So if you all buy my book, would love for it to be shared, or even email me just like kind of what you got out of it. It's really helpful to hear, once again, like patterns of what resonates with people. And if you go to the event, backing up to the event, it does come with a journal. So $25 includes Let the Light In journal. It's a kind of gender neutral journal. Put it up on the screen. It's not sold yet online, like I said, but there's like an inside prompt that basically has, as I've given it to people, is this prompt that really helps them to unlock how to just start. And each journal, I actually tear off a part of the page in order to show like this journal is about to get messy and don't come to it perfect. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be the first of many of those sorts of events where I can just encourage journaling and getting back to things. But I so appreciate this time, Mike. Our conversation was so amazing, and I would love to be back anytime you want to have me. But yeah, looking forward to hopefully meeting more people in person, or even just reaching out via email. I'd love to chat and help people get out of shame. The Shame Game is all about sharing that one story we never thought we'd tell, we never thought we'd write down, in order to put it into light and in order to get community for it and just know we're not alone. And so the Shame Game is me going first and sharing my stories of shame. And pushing countercultural conversations around mental, relational, and sexual health. So all the things, but this whole creative conversation was just what I needed today, Mike. So I really appreciate that. This has been super fun, and it's got me amped up to even be out at this event at the end of May
Awesome.
And help people. So I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was a total pleasure, and love all the things that you're doing. I know this is just the beginning, so I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.